But first up this afternoon, we're turning our attention to the issue of climate change. And protesters are planning to block traffic in Dublin city centre tomorrow. It's part of an international climate demonstration, and the organisation called Extinction Rebellion are entering their fourth day of protests in the UK. You may have seen the coverage of some of this on the news yesterday. They have already blocked traffic at various points in London City. 3 activists glued themselves to a train at Canary Wharf that caused minor delays, and 4 people glued themselves together at Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn's house. And police have made nearly 400 arrests in London over these protests. But Extinction Rebellion Ireland are going to block traffic on O'Connell Street from 1 o'clock tomorrow in Dublin, and it's to highlight the government's inaction on climate and ecological emergency that we have. So will you be inconvenienced by that, or do you think that kind of action is inappropriate? Do let me know. Text us 53106, or maybe it is just that urgent action is needed to try and sort out our climate change problem. But to discuss this, I'm joined on the line by Eoin Campbell of Extinction Rebellion Ireland. Eoin, good afternoon.
Hello there, hi.
Eoin, you might tell us a little bit about what exactly is planned for O'Connell Street in Dublin tomorrow.
So we plan to meet at 1 o'clock at the Spire, and we are going to host a festival atmosphere, and we're asking everybody to arrive there, and we'll take it from there.
Okay, and how many people are you expecting?
Don't really know. It's hard to know. Hundreds, maybe thousands, maybe 2,000, who knows?
And you're meeting at the Spire. Many people will be familiar with that area. So are you going to take over the street there, or what is the plan logistically?
We're going to set up a mini stage, I think, and we have some people volunteering to kind of perform, and we have some people to come and speak. John Gibbons, I think, is planned to speak, and some young people. People are basically offering their time online through social media to us, and we're just gathering that together, trying to create a solar-powered platform for people to present their messages.
Okay, and is the organisation Extinction Rebellion Ireland, it is an affiliation of the UK version of that?
Yeah, it's really just, we're kind of self-organising as an Irish group. I've been involved in this issue for years, but the people I've met through Extinction Rebellion Ireland are a lot of them are new people I haven't met before, which is encouraging. We're basically around the globe now in, I think, 80 countries. So we're spreading, people are just getting together in small groups and self-organising.
Okay, and tell us a little bit about why you decided to do this, particularly tomorrow and particularly now.
Well, the organising group that's currently, organising, we don't really want to continue that. We want people just to come on board and organise. But that organisational group decided to do it on Good Friday. I'm not actually involved with that decision, so I can't answer the answer specifically. But I think it's appropriate that we're following on from the UK is obviously well organised. You've seen what's happened over the last 4 days. It's pretty incredible, and so we're following on from that. So we are getting more attention the last day or two, and it's building now to our action tomorrow.
So can we expect to see some of the similar protesting things that happened in London over the past 3-4 days? Traffic being blocked, people gluing themselves to different parts of the city, to Jeremy Corbyn's home. Mm-hmm. Will it be similar sort of action?
I don't think so. We plan just to gather. It's our first outing as a group here in Ireland. It's a small gesture really compared to what the UK are doing. New York have been doing some small actions. So it's going to be relatively minor action. And we're basically ramping up from here. We're asking people to get involved, listen to the messages from our website, at rebellion.earth, and get involved. Basically, we're asking people to take this issue seriously because it's extremely serious.
Oh, and I might ask you to explain a little bit for our listeners. We have seen protests of this kind that, sort of stop traffic in big cities. We've seen housing ones quite recently that have taken place. They're always criticised for bringing the city to a standstill in terms of traffic, in terms of businesses, just in terms of people who want to make their way through the city. You might explain a little bit to listeners why, in your view, this is the only way to protest.
Well, I've been following all this, obviously, for the last week, and I've been involved in this for 15, 20 years. And I guess I'd put this question to your listeners. What else should we do? The A to B marches have had zero success in terms of climate change. Over the last 30 years, we've been polluting 60% more rather than reducing. I would ask your listeners, tell us, what should we do instead? Nothing's happening. We're going in the wrong direction. Profoundly in the wrong direction. We're destroying nature profoundly. We know it. It's mainstream science now. So I don't really know what else we can do. I've done many protests. I've walked on marches, A to B, say something, walk away. the Taoiseach gets back into the office the next day and continues destroying nature, ultimately we're talking about. I don't really know what else to do, and I'd appreciate some feedback from your listeners.
Okay, well, let us know. The text line is open, 53106 at a cost of 30 cents. You can tweet us at Lunchtime Live NT. If you think this sort of sit-down, blocking traffic protest isn't the right way to go, what is the answer? You hear Eoin there saying that the A to B marches haven't worked in the past. We still have a massive problem with climate change, so do let us know. Eoin, I might ask you, what are your thoughts on government action up to this point? Anything that has happened? What's your take on that?
We're basically dragging our heels, and many people have said this over the last decades, and certainly in the last year or two. Friends of the Earth, spokespeople, Green Party, its message is very, very clear. We're not doing enough, and the government is actively trying to undermine a lot of these amendments in Europe nationally, slow a lot of this stuff down. So we're getting nowhere. David Attenborough now, the new series is on Netflix. He's talking about the destruction that's happening. The Pope and his advisors are saying we have an extinction crisis on us. So mainstream professional scientists in this area and leaders in these areas are saying it's absolutely end game. So what else do we do? Do we just put our heads back in the sand and continue? I don't really think so. So I'm going to try and do my best, and people that are involved with Extinction Rebellion, we're all trying to do our best here.
Eoin, you're on the ground speaking to people involved in organisations like this. How far have we come from a public point of view, people in Ireland? Are we starting to take the climate change problem seriously, or more seriously than we have done in the past?
Yes, definitely. What we call we give a presentation, and we've built an Irish version of the presentation, and so get online and have a look and subscribe to find out more. But in that presentation, we talk about the Overton window, where things that aren't acceptable in society become acceptable, like gay marriage, for instance. So action around climate change is becoming more acceptable. Colleagues of mine and people would say that it's more. I speak to a woman in a petrol station in West Cork. She knows what's going on. We do know it. We can see it. We can feel it. So the perception is changing. We're getting there, but we're not getting there fast enough. We need to turn everything around within 5 to 10 years. And that's going to be, unfortunately, extremely, extremely difficult. How do we stop flying? How do we have move to a plant-based diet? These are very, very hard questions and choices to make. I don't have the answers. I'm not the expert. We're just saying it needs to stop.
A text in here, Eoin. Most of the people on the climate change march tomorrow will be students or tree huggers who never worked a day in their life. The Gardaí should be sent down and baton charge them off the road. You will hear that kind of attitude sometimes when cities are brought to a standstill. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I've heard that from London. Actually, it's been phrased differently, that we're all middle-class hippies. I've met people through this organisation, and they're new people, and it's a great, fresh group of people to work with, and it's really empowering. Yeah, that's the common thing to say. I don't know, is Greta Thunberg, a hippie? These young student strikers, okay, they're young people, but they get the message, I think, more importantly, more clearly than the politicians and older people.
Oh, and you mentioned that you're self-organising for this protest tomorrow. How do you sort of ensure then, when everybody's in charge as such, that things don't go wrong? And we have seen an awful lot of arrests carried out in London, I think up to 400 over the past couple of days, and some damage caused as well. So how can you ensure that things, that you can keep a lid on that kind of thing tomorrow?
The damage was very, very minor. The disruption has been maximum, has been huge. We are a non-violent organisation and non-political, and it's about festival, it's about happiness, it's about love, it's about connecting to people, connecting with the grief of the challenge ahead, systems breaking down, nature breaking down. So it's kind of more looking to emotionally connect with people, get people to come and join us. Just to your previous message, what does that person have to say about nature being destroyed? 60% of more pollution in the last 30 years. What does that person who's message to you, what's their choice? What would they choose to do rather than come out into the streets? I'd love to hear that.
Okay, well, Vincent is on the line. Oh, and you might stay where you are. Vincent, what do you think of these protests that are planned for Dublin City Centre tomorrow?
Well, a couple of things. Number one, I firmly believe that the damage done to the environment is the number one issue confronting the human race. But with regards to the tactics used tomorrow, To block traffic is not a protest. It's criminal behaviour. In the spirit of Martin Luther King and Gandhi, you block traffic if you're prepared to go to jail and suffer the consequences without protest. And your former guest said, well, what can we do? Well, I'd suggest what we can do is work through the democratic process, elect officials, and make change through the democratic process and not by criminal behaviour.
But Vincent, you may have heard Eoin say there at the start, I mean, they have tried many other tactics, so lots of marches and lots of, presentations and campaigns been made to different elected officials, and it's not having any impact. So I suppose when your back is put to the wall, you know that there's a massive problem there, something has to be done. I guess you do take more of an extreme action.
Well, when your back is put to the wall, the solution is not to commit criminal behaviour. Martin Luther King and Gandhi took 50 years to make change through non-violent means without breaking the law. There's never an appropriate time to break the law unless one is prepared to go to prison without protest and accept the punishment.
Eoin, I might put some of Vincent's point to you there. What would you have to say about
Martin
that?
Martin Luther King, actually, he said, we who engage in non-violent direct action are not the creators of tension. We merely bring to the surface the hidden tension that is already alive. And that's a direct quote from Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King was arrested many, many times.
And that's a wonderful quote. And Martin Luther King was arrested many times, and he spent time in jail without protest.
Eoin, do you want to come back in on that?
He's a repeated protester, and he got changed. We don't have the kind of time he spent. We don't have, IPCC is saying we've got 11 years, 2030, to change everything around. We don't have the kind of time that these heroes had before.
So are you suggesting that by breaking the law, that will change the policies?
Well, ultimately what we're looking for is mass mobilisation, and we want you to join us. And if we get thousands of arrests, we'll be on every front page of this country's media. That's what we're looking for.
I'd gladly join you, but the point is, I don't think you make too many friends for your cause by blocking O'Connell Bridge.
I agree. There's a fine line between us.
If you agree then, I think it's your obligation this afternoon to make that point, that we will not prevent people from going about their normal duties to and from work, etc., etc.
I agree with you. I agree that disruption is inconvenient, and we apologise as an organisation, as a grouping of volunteers. We apologise to everybody that we inconvenience, but the ultimate inconvenience is destruction of nature.
Well, I agree. I'm very glad to hear you say that. Congratulations. And I do hope you will condemn those in England who are preventing normal citizens from going about their normal lives.
No, we don't at all. We applaud them for bringing this to the mainstream media.
I would call that hypocrisy.
Vincent, I might just ask you before I let you go, what other suggestions would you have? Or you say that you do take the climate change problem very seriously. You know something has to be done. What kind of action would you get involved in then if you feel that a sit-down march like this or a big protest that brings a city to a standstill isn't for you? What would you like to see happen?
Well, what I would like to see happen is people run for public office, and on the platform on which they run, this is their major issue. They get a majority in the Dáil, or the majority in Westminster, or the majority in the US House of Representatives, and bring about change through the normal process of electing officials. That is the only way to do it in a democracy, unless you're prepared to follow the King-Gandhi philosophy of break the law and be prepared to go to jail without complaint and accept the consequences.
Vincent, thank you for your comments. Eoin, I'll just come back to you. What did you make of that final comment that Vincent made there?
Yeah, and that's one of our main three goals here, is for a citizens' assembly, and that's what the UK and worldwide we're asking for. But guess what? Ireland has had a citizens' assembly, and the citizens' assemblies instructions have not been have not been taken by the government. That's the trouble here. The UK are pointed to us. Look, Ireland, you've done a citizens' assembly. You've done it already. They're asking for one. We have done one, and the government are not implementing the drastic changes. Citizens Assembly, 100 people from society. It's like sortition. It's the system of lottery for choosing elected officials. Elected officials are through the democratic process currently in the last 200 years. It's not working. We have gotten ourselves here. It doesn't currently work. Unfortunately, I wish it did. Sortition in the past is the action of selecting or determining something by the casting or drawing of lots. That's something like the Citizens Assembly that is working for gay marriage and other things. So we have the answers. We're not implementing it.
Oh, and I might just ask you though, Vincent's point is valid in terms of, traffic being brought to a standstill tomorrow, but in terms of blocking traffic and, someone in an emergency, ambulances, somebody, in labour, people just trying to get about their business in the city centre, what kind of provision have you in place to make sure that something like that doesn't happen?
We plan to let the Luas continue to travel. Obviously, it's public transport. Obviously, if there's emergency, obviously we're going to facilitate that. We're trying to make a statement. It's a small statement in comparison to the UK, and this is our first outing, and we ask people to come and join us.
One text in here, good luck with the demonstration tomorrow. Another one, I fully support any group that are trying to get the public's attention about climate change. We are approaching the point of no return in the next few years, and the governments are not doing enough. Christina is on the line. Christina, what do you think?
Hi there. I'm fully supportive of the protest tomorrow. I suppose I'm a late convert to this approach. I'm a senior professional. I run my own business. I work in the property industry, and I've been working to change things from the inside for the last number of years. And the change is so slow that it's going to be too late to do what needs to be done. Something needs to kick governments across the world out of their focus on remaining popular and being voted back in, which is what is driving every politician. I will attend the protest tomorrow. It'll be my first time attending one of these events. I have supported the school strike march a couple of weeks ago and attended that together with my son and grandchildren, actually, and my adult daughter. And I think that people need to show the politicians that they want them to make the necessary changes. And I think the only way that's going to happen, I've tried emailing politicians, I've tried lobbying, I've tried all those different things, and I think the only thing that will change politicians and make them act is mass mobilisation by people across the planet.
Christina, can I ask you, I'm sure as somebody who's interested in this issue, you've seen what's happened in the UK over the past couple of days. What do you make of the tactics used around London?
Again, I'll say that my understanding is that it's non-violent protest. I think it follows very worthy tradition. And I think it's having an effect. I mean, the Daily Mirror's got a front page headline about climate change now. That hasn't happened before. I think it makes people sit up and take notice and start listening. Whether it'll make politicians sit up and take notice, I don't know, unless there's sufficient volume, sufficient numbers of people doing it. Greta Thunberg spoke to the European Parliament earlier this week. I understand that Irish politicians tried to stop her speaking because they didn't want her to speak. So we have to bring the politicians to listen to what the people, and particularly the people who are going to be most impacted by what is happening, which is our children and our grandchildren. We need to bring elderly, predominantly male politicians to think that the public will be behind them if they make the necessary changes.
And Christina, you said at the start that you're sort of a late convert to this kind of protest. Is climate change something that's always been at the forefront of your mind, but you just thought there was probably other ways to address it?
Exactly, yes. And I'm still pursuing those other ways, and I still regularly email every politician involved when I see something that I disagree with, and I would have made a submission on the Dublin climate change plan and on the Rath Down climate change plan, and I engage in all the democratic processes relevant to it. However, the scale of change required is such that we need to make the politicians sit up and make the necessary changes.
OK, Christina, thanks for your call on Lunchtime Live this afternoon. Eoin, I'll come back to you. In terms of what Christina is saying there, you know, time is running out and there just isn't a whole lot of time left to try and address this issue. What's your assessment of how other environmental organisations have been doing when it comes to this? I'm
really glad you asked that. Greenpeace are quoted at a board meeting, at a meeting with one of the founders of Extinction Rebellion, Roger Halm. One of the people at that meeting said, "We know what's happening, and we know we're taking the position of a managed defeat." Greenpeace, high-level management saying we are having a managed defeat. They know they're defeated, and they're just going to manage that. So, hello, what else do we do? Do we just stay supporting Greenpeace, stay doing the same thing, or do we do something radically different? And this is what we're talking about, something radically different. Unfortunately, none of us want to be out in the streets doing this. We've all got kids, we want to go home, we want to do our own thing. It's really unfortunate, but here it is.
Couple of texts in here, Eoin, we're all aware of climate change. Why block traffic? Another one, what a bunch of ideological fanatics these are. He even brought up how we have to give up meat and the usual rubbish we hear. Their new saviour is Greta Thunberg, who is only a child who gives speeches, but does she walk to all cities or fly? That came in from Martin and Cavan. That's just a flavour, Eoin, of some of the texts.
Martin, could Martin message in, Martin, what should we do instead? 60% more pollution in the last 30 years. What else should we do? Instead of messaging that message, Martin, which is very easy to do, give us something else that actually says what you would do, how we would do it to change the destruction of nature.
Yeah, that is such a good point. I think people can be very critical sometimes of these kind of protests and are very quick to, you know, say that they shouldn't happen. But it's much, much, much harder to be able to put forward other alternatives.
Exactly that. And I'm watching media in the UK. Sky News are having the same arguments. You're just blocking people. You're fascist. This kind of stuff. We're not. You know, I'm not a fascist. I'm just a concerned citizen, and I've been involved in this area a little bit. And here I am now joining this group tomorrow with my children to try and say something clear. We're part of the school strikes. We're supportive. We're all one group. We're all organising separately, but we're coming to the same point.
OK, well, Eoin Campbell of Extinction Rebellion Ireland, thanks for speaking to us on Lunchtime Live, and the best of luck with the protest tomorrow. Do let us know if anybody has any other options or ideas of how to address climate change. If you don't agree with this bringing the city to a standstill tomorrow, do let us know. You can call us 1890 453 106. I'd love to hear your views live on air. You can text us 53106 at a cost of 30 cents. Tweet us at Lunchtime Live, or you can email us lunchtimelive@newstalk.com.